The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the
Internet is just horrible.
And I listen more attentively. There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't cool.
I almost changed the opening song for today. I almost played that song by Larissa. Almost. I was this close.
When you were just talking to me.
But I want to try and stay serious today. It's a very, very serious issue. All right, we are up. That's good. Say that again? Well, we could have played Jailbreak by AC/DC. God. Oh, there's a Phil Collins song I also thought about, but I'm not going back to jail. Although I know someone else that might be. You never know. Just can't let too much out.
Not too much.
We have, 10 new sponsors for today's show?
Wow.
Freaking awesome. Wait till you see the new ads coming in for the next Valley Patriot on Tuesday, which will be an epic edition, trust me when I tell you guys. It's good to have a studio audience today, right? Nice. We packed them in because everybody knew what we were going to talk about. Everyone wanted to see it live. Wait, Baba Buzz coming up. Wow, you even heard a couple audience members doing a Baba Buzz out there. Nobody brought me popcorn, though. If Ken Roulette was here, he would have brought me popcorn. I was hoping he was going to come. I can't hear him. Hey. All right, what do you think? Should we get the show on the road? I don't even know.
Up to you.
What do we do?
Your double episode. We got you got time for.
It's a double show
Melvin's
extravaganza today. I've been waiting since March for this show.
Hey.
Must have not been paying attention.
Oh, slacking in the audience. All right, let's get this show on the road. Let's get popping. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan. With the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi, atop two guys smoke shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. I have been waiting since March 8th to do this show, and boy, I couldn't be happier. The Judge Zano gave us a great ruling not long ago saying that I have a First Amendment right to expose Lawrence's homeless coordinator, Kelly Birchall Frazier. And so we are going to do that today. And I brought in with me because I think, it's hard when you're a news guy, but you're the one making news. So it would have been hard for me to come in and just talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours about me. That it will get confusing because I'm talking about me, but I'd have to, in some places, do it in third person. So I have enlisted a little bit of help from a guy who has probably more credibility on Beacon Hill than anybody I've ever met. Former State Representative Lenny Mirra is with us today, who's also a columnist in the Valley Patriot, and he's been not really following it that much. He didn't really know a lot about what was going on with my criminal trial, with these bogus harassment orders, with the money in City Hall. And so when we started chatting about it yesterday, I thought, you know what? He'd be the perfect guy to come in and interview me about what has gone on. And so I want to start with breaking news. Actually, I have two pieces of breaking news. We'll give you the first one now, and that is that the jury in my criminal trial, you might be saying, what criminal trial? Because I'm sure none of you read the Tribune. The criminal trial was held Monday and Tuesday of this week in Lawrence District Court. The jury obviously found that Kelly Birchall Frazier, the homeless coordinator for Lawrence, had no credibility, and they found me unanimously not guilty of the charges of violating a harassment order. And we're going to get into all of that and what all of that means, but I wanted to give you that breaking story. That's kind of the end of the story, right? But we want you guys to understand while everybody in the Tribune and social media and a couple of radio stations called about this, some of the Spanish language stations were talking about this, everyone's talking about harassment orders and Kelly Frazier's in fear of her life and all this stuff that they're talking about. But what nobody was talking about is why it happened, which is why they did what they did, which is why her and her husband did what they did. They came after me because I was investigating them. Now, they're not very bright, unfortunately, and they keep thinking for some reason, they keep saying out loud that when I say I'm investigating them, they somehow think that that means I've been hired by City Hall to investigate them, or I've been hired by someone to investigate them. I'm an investigative journalist. That's what I do. So I investigated Lisa Pearson. We came in and did a whole show on the corruption in Salisbury with Lisa Pearson, the planning director in Salisbury. That was an investigation. Now, I know some people weren't raised well and probably are not that educated, so they don't understand that. So I just want to explain. I want to do everything that I can to make it as simple as I can so people don't get the wrong impression. So let me give you a timeline, though, and then Lenny and I will start chatting. So you may remember I did a show last July about Lynette Perez. Lynette Perez is the domestic violence coordinator in the Lawrence Police Department. She is best friends with Brian DePina, the mayor. Their families go back to the Dominican Republic. She applied for an ARPA grant. That's the American Rescue Plan. That's federal grants that the Biden administration sent to the city of Lawrence to help nonprofits. She applied using, at best, fake paperwork, and at worst, fraudulent paperwork. And the nonprofit that she applied for, she put down Greg Delisario, the city council, Greg Delisario's wife, as a board member without her knowledge. And she incorporated her nonprofit after she applied for the money. So she applied for the money before the nonprofit even existed. So
and I mentioned
how
two
ARPA
names
money
today.
works, how federal money works, is it comes into a community.
And we're going to keep digging.
And it
we're
goes
keep
to
exposing.
the executive, which is the mayor's. And the mayor passes it off to community development, planning and development. Some communities are planning and development, some communities merge them. So if I say community development, planning development, I might get the actual title wrong because every community does it differently. So these monies go to planning and community development, and then that department is in charge of administering the grants. They're in charge of going over the applications, letting nonprofits know the money is available, then going over the applications, then choosing who's going to get what money, and then sending that application up to the mayor's office. So Lynette Perez, who is the domestic violence coordinator, had supposedly a domestic violence nonprofit. And she applied for, I think it was $25,000, don't hold me to the number, $25,000, $30,000 grant for a nonprofit that didn't exist, which is why I wrote her story first. So how did I find out about her story? Octavian Spanner stood before the Lawrence City Council July 18th of last year and said, we know you approved all of these grants for all of these nonprofits, but under the federal law, you have to vote twice at two separate meetings. So tonight you need to take another vote. But before we do, I have to take two names off the list that have already been voted on and approved. And he got the crap kicked out of him by Council President Giovanni Rodriguez, who said, we've already approved these, and now you're pulling two names off. That means you didn't do your due diligence the first time around. That makes us look bad. And he dressed him down, and rightfully so. But Octavian Spanner saved Brian DePina from going to jail by what he did that day. And if you go on YouTube, you can find this video.
This one?
So, no. Hold on. No, hold on. So he says to the council, I'm taking two names off the list. They're both city employees. The first was Lynette Perez. The second was Kelly Birchall Frazier. She's the homeless coordinator, and she also has a nonprofit called IVCS. That's International Veterans Care Services, which, by the way, isn't international. Like, even the name is a lie. It's not international. They handle veterans in, like, Lawrence and Methuen. They're not in, like, Uzbekistan handing out grants for people and doing soup kitchens, right? So what we learned that night was that Kelly Frazier and Lynette Perez tried to steer federal dollars to their own nonprofit. I wrote the story about Lynette Perez because she was Brian DePina's campaign manager. And her nonprofit wasn't real when she applied for the money. She was on the front page of the Valley Patriot. We came in and we did a show about it. Octavian Spanner even came on the show and talked about it. My plan was for the September edition, that was the August edition, we published that. My plan was for the September edition to then do the other nonprofit that they had to take off the list because it was a conflict of interest, and that was Kelly Birchall Frazier. Unfortunately, as most of you know who follow me, what happened at the end of August, right before I was getting ready for the September paper? I ended up in a coma for 11 days. I ended up in the hospital for 34 days. I ended up at Hannah Dustin Rehab for, I think, 7 or 10 days. And then the day before they discharged me, they diagnosed me with lung cancer. So I spent the next 2 months back and forth to Dana-Farber and Beth Israel in Boston. So by the time I actually started to recover enough to go back to doing investigations, like I was producing a paper along the way in my hospital bed, in my rehab bed, in bed at home when I finally went home, from Dana-Farber, in the waiting rooms. I'm on my laptop producing a paper, but I'm just compiling what other people are sending me. I'm not doing investigations. I'm not at top of my game, obviously. Till I got a phone call at the end of February. Just as we were ramping up for the bash, just as we were getting ready, Tom's feeling better, we're going to have a bash, the papers get rolling again, I'm almost back to normal, and I got a phone call from somebody in City Hall who said, "Hey, Tom, I know you've been sick, but you wrote that big story about Lynette Perez. Do you ever plan on doing the other half of that story about Kelly Birchall Frazier using her public position in City Hall to steer federal dollars to her own nonprofit?" And I said, you know what? Now that I'm feeling better, let's see if we can't get that off the back burner. And I started looking into it again. And I started making phone calls, and I wrote up a story. But the day before I posted that story, I always do a little preview on Facebook, coming in the next Valley Patriot, right? Yep. Sometimes Lenny Mirra has a great upcoming story, and I go, coming in the next Valley Patriot, Lenny Mirra's got an explosive story about the State House. So I posted, coming at the end of the week, the next Valley Patriot, Lawrence homeless coordinator tries to steer $200,000 of federal grant money to her own nonprofit. And the same day, 3 hours later, I had a knock at my door by a North Andover police officer handing me a harassment order. Kelly Frazier went to the police to stop me from writing the story and claimed that I threatened her life. And the first box on a harassment order is, you're not allowed to post about the person on social media. Wow. Now listen, Jim Jajuga came after me. Mary Claire Kennedy came after me. Willie Lantigua certainly came after me. The Diatomos sued me for 7 friggin' years. They came after me. They bleeded me dry financially. For 7 years, these guys came after me. Kevin Thompson came after me. Patty Dowling came after me. And none of these people were ever able to get me. I got a little arrogant, I got to be honest with you. I got a little full of myself on it because I'd never lost in court, so I thought, you know what? If these people try to sue me to gag me, the courts will throw it out. It never dawned on me, and apparently it never dawned on Willie Lantigua or anybody else, that instead of going to civil court, make a criminal allegation, and because you're the victim when you make a criminal allegation, the other person can't write about you. So they tried to use the criminal justice system to stop me from writing the story about the Lawrence homeless coordinator trying to steer federal dollars to her own nonprofit. And she almost got away with it. She almost got away with it. Because her boss signed off on it, the mayor signed off on it, the council voted on it the first round, and it wasn't until the second round when Octavian Spanner literally saved Brian DePina from going to jail. Because if that had passed that second time, Brian DePina, the feds would have swooped in within under 7 days, and Brian would have been screwed. That he approved a federal grant to the homeless coordinator at the expense of another nonprofit that wouldn't be getting that money. On top of the fact that the president of that IVCS, International Veterans Care Services, which is not international, the president is a convicted felon. We know him as Debo Brown. His real name is Donald Frazier. So all of this was going to be in my story. But because I got served with a harassment order, I couldn't write it. And I got very upset. I went to the court and said, how can this be? How can someone use the criminal justice system to silence a reporter? I mean, if they get away with this, think about this. You hate Donald Trump. CNN wouldn't be able to write about Donald Trump. Donald Trump can get a harassment order against it and say, hey, they hurt my feelings. They put lies on me, she kept saying. They put lies on me. He threatened my life. I'm in fear of my life. She actually told the judge that the homeless in Lawrence were all violent, not all, but the homeless in Lawrence were violent and mentally ill, and that Mr. Duggan put lies on me and claimed that I stole $3 million, which I literally never did, right? But okay, whatever. I supposedly accused her of stealing $3 million out of City Hall. She said this to distract from the $200,000. That's what she was doing. And that and she couldn't work. She can't go to work anymore because she's afraid to work with the homeless because she's afraid they're going to attack her. That's what she said in court. We have the transcripts. She almost got away with it. So, Lenny, a lot has happened, and there's a lot more that we can blow out. But I'm going to give you a chance to kind of talk it through with me and ask whatever questions that the people at home might have. Because in the last judge's order that we have, he says, I have a First Amendment right to write about her as long as I don't threaten her. And I have no intention on threatening. I never threatened her in the first place. She claimed because I used an analogy about Gaza and the Israelis that she was in fear of her life, which is amazing, But okay, whatever. She filed the first harassment order, which went 30 days. And what do you have? Hold on. What do you have for, what is your number one? Oh, so, by the way, the day before all of this happened, I did a podcast right here at the show. And I talked about how I had a story coming up involving the Lawrence homeless coordinator. And I want to play you a little clip of what I said. This is either the day before or 2 days before all of this occurred. And I mentioned two names today that they are, and we're going to keep digging, and we're going to keep exposing. And you can bet someone's coming after me. You can bet someone's going to attack me within the next couple of weeks down the line. They're going to try and destroy my credibility because they know I'm looking into it. You can bet. I mean, I'll bet you everything that I own that next month at this time when I'm sitting here, we're talking about somebody coming after me. Whether it's filing a lawsuit or making threats or having somebody really big show up at my office and give me some, fatherly advice, it's going to happen because it always does when I start to expose a certain group of corrupt people in the Merrimack Valley. And once again, we're on a story that involves corruption, and it all goes back once again to the same group of people. So, you can roll up Melvin Taylor. That's the end of the show. How did I know that? How did I know that? Because within 24 or 48 hours, don't hold me to the day, I posted on Facebook and a cop came knocking on my door with a harassment order. And they keep calling it a restraining order. But it was filed in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has what's called a harassment order. She claimed that my news story was going to harass her. She claimed it because I made an analogy. And for those of you who don't know what an analogy is, that's when you take a situation and you apply what's going on to that situation to another situation. Like I said, I was amassing tanks on the border. I don't own any tanks. So I don't know how anybody could think I have tanks that I'm going to amass on the border. But okay, whatever. The fact is, they tried to use the criminal system to stop a reporter from reporting. And we have a First Amendment in this country. And they even went so far as to have me arrested. They actually had me arrested. I don't want to jump ahead. So, Lenny, you're coming into this new. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to turn the whole show over to you, and I'm going to let you host the show and ask me whatever you want, and I'll try and give you as best I can, as honest as I can, because there's some things I still can't talk about, and that's coming, by the way. We have just retained Sullivan and Malloy out of Concord, New Hampshire, and they're going to be appearing before the New Hampshire Supreme Court I believe August 9th, we're going to be filing officially in court. And within 30 days, we're going to be appearing before the New Hampshire Supreme Court. And the current order that's still in effect will be removed. We're almost 100% on that because of all the shenanigans that went on.
No, happy to do it, Tom. Until you called me last night, I didn't know anything about this story at all.
Can I get some water, honey? I get.
And, you know, when I started reading into it, when I read all the documents that you had sent me, you know, I was angry, I was outraged, but, you know, I wasn't surprised because this is the kind of corruption, honest to God, correct me if I'm wrong, that happens in Massachusetts and, let's face it, in certain cities in Massachusetts, right? This happens all the time. And, you know, when you see a title like homeless coordinator, usually in Massachusetts, it's a person who cares about that issue, right? Wants to do something about homelessness. And boy, does Lawrence need to do something about homelessness?
Sure do.
Right? It's like one of the worst cities in the whole state, in the whole country probably, with this issue. You took me on that little trip to Tent City on the side of the Merrimack on a freezing cold day because you bring food to this homeless encampment every week.
And I don't get paid for it like
no,
the homeless
it's donations,
paid,
right? And volunteers that are helping you. And usually people that run programs like this care about homelessness, right? And that's what a homeless coordinator should do. So when you read someone like Kelly Birchall Frazier, who is the homeless coordinator, probably draws a pretty good salary from the city of Lawrence on this, right? It just makes it all the more outrageous that she would misuse her position to pull a stunt like this because I'm a former state rep. Believe me, I know how many millions of dollars the Commonwealth spends every year on this issue. And people often wonder, where the hell does all this money go?
Well, now you're starting to find out.
Well, now you draw up this story about how she creates this phony baloney group and puts her husband as, what'd you say, president?
He's president, yeah.
Probably drawing a salary there as well.
It's not a phony nonprofit. The other girl, Lynette's nonprofit at the time was phony. So her nonprofit is legitimate. I want to make sure that, you know, I don't want to mislead anybody. As fun as that might be, I don't want to mislead anybody.
But look what she's doing with the money, Tom.
Well, it's public dollars that her department administers those grants. And her department decides who gets those grants. And her department decided that instead of giving it to Karina at Daybreak or TMF, or Clear Path for Veterans New England, or Veterans Northeast Outreach, the American Legion.
Oh, good point. Excellent organizations, all of them.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead, they were steering $200,000 to the homeless coordinator's own nonprofit.
Now think about that. $200,000 can go a long way
Sure can.
to providing food to these people living on the side of the Merrimack in a tent, many of whom, as our audience pointed out, are actually veterans of this country.
Right.
Right? And so, you know, it's just amazing how the state can come up with millions, actually billions for people who come here illegally.
Right.
But we can't funnel $200,000 appropriately to the people who really need it.
Right.
And that's what made this whole story.
And they almost got away with it. They almost got away with it.
Yeah.
If Brian DePina's special assistant, Octavian Spanner, had not caught this, and this had gone through for a second vote, he would have been in jail. Oh, maybe not because he's only the mayor's assistant, but the mayor certainly would have been under indictment. A welder would have been under indictment, and I don't know for sure if Kelly would have been under indictment, but she might have been, because it's not just illegal; it's so illegal.
Yeah.
And Octavian Spanner said at the July 18th, 2023 City Council meeting that he had consulted with the city attorneys when he found out, and the city attorneys advised him to tell both Kelly Birchall Frazier and Lynette Perez that they should seek an opinion from the Ethics Commission. And if they could come back with a letter from the Ethics Commission saying what they were doing was okay, they would put the name back on the list and they would give them the funds.
Right.
And I believe it was Stephanie Infante, but I might be wrong, but I think it was Stephanie Infante who said, did they come back with a letter? He said no. So I'm pulling their name from the list. Now here's something even more funny that I found out long after this all started, and that's that in mid-August, while I was in a coma, she applied a second time. So when the lights were off and the city council meeting was over, and she didn't get those $200,000, that $200,000 was still sitting in an account, non-allocated. So she applied in the dead of night again. She sent in another application, which was just a duplicate of the first application. She was told by someone in City Hall that unless she showed a letter from the Ethics Commission, she wasn't getting that money. So she sent, or somebody on her behalf, sent an email. We have all the emails now. Sent an email back to the mayor's office requesting that they withdraw their request for money. I think at that point they realized how illegal what they were doing was, because I think people inside City Hall were talking about what I had done to Lynette Perez. And I have to say, Lynette Perez, I've met a million times. She's one of the nicest people. As a person, I like her. I saw her during the campaign. She was Brian DePina's campaign manager. We talked a bunch of times. She seems really nice. So it gave me no pleasure writing that first story about someone that I liked, someone that I knew and that I liked. But see, I had to do my job.
That's right.
And this is my job. And if a cop pulls you over, even if you're his brother-in-law, if you're drunk driving,
he has to take
you
right.
in.
But getting back to this whole reporting aspect of it, this is the city of Lawrence, right?
Right.
So where is the Lawrence Eagle Tribune on this story? How come they're not exposing this? Because this is outrageous, even by Lawrence standards, right?
Right.
This is pretty bad for Massachusetts and for Lawrence.
Right.
So where is that newspaper on this? How come they're not reporting? Where's the Boston Globe and all this?
Well, you know what? I think the Eagle Tribune is on it now.
Okay.
I think after, so when I got arrested, and we'll talk about the details of that shortly, but when I got arrested on Saturday, April 20th was the night I got arrested. I spent 2 days in a cell in Methuen. Word spread like wildfire through the political community.
Out of all these criminals, you're the one who spent time in jail.
Right, because here's what they said. They said, Mr. Duggan, you violated a restraining order in Massachusetts and there's no bail. But it wasn't a restraining order. It was a harassment order out of New Hampshire. But because Massachusetts doesn't have harassment orders, they treat out-of-state harassment orders under 209A, and they don't bail you. And they should have bailed me, but they didn't. They told me they were going to bail me, and then they didn't. They didn't read me my rights when they arrested me, and they used all of my statements against me. There's a lot of things that they did. And we're going to get into that later on. But I ended up spending 2 days in a cell. As bad as my lungs are, and I don't know if you know this, but in at least the Methuen jail, the jail door is the bars, right?
Yep.
The bars they close like you see on TV.
Sure.
Except in Methuen, they've got plexiglass on both sides, so you're breathing stale air for 2 days. So I kept begging them to please open the door. I really want to breathe. I just want to breathe. Sorry, we can't do that, Mr. Duggan, but we can bring you your inhaler. Well, listen. An inhaler opens your lungs, but if there's no fresh air to go in, it doesn't really do anything for you.
Right.
Whatever. Most of the cops are very good to me. I don't really have much of a complaint. But I think my point is, these people, I got to give them credit. Debo and Kelly, got to give them credit. They got further than anybody else. They tried to destroy me. They tried to take me down, and they got so close. They got closer than Jajuga River got, and they certainly got closer than the Diadamos, Willie Lantigua, Patty Dowling, Mary Claire Kennedy, Kevin Thompson, and the rest of them that have tried over.
So let's get into how they got at you. What they did is they saw a Facebook posting that you made. That you hadn't even written the story yet, right?
Right.
It has not appeared in the Valley Patriot at that time, right? So you put a posting on Facebook saying you're going to write about this, and she obviously caught wind of this, right? So Kelly gets wind of this. And think about how she responds. Does she call you and say, hey, you've got it wrong, or hey, Tom, here are the facts? No, she didn't do that, did she?
No.
She never once called you personally and said, hey, you screwed up the story. Here's what really happened. No, tell us instead what she did.
And Willie Lantigua will tell you, if you do that, if my worst enemy in the world calls me on the phone and says, Tom, I think you got it wrong, my phone line is always open. If you think you can prove me wrong, I have on multiple occasions come on this show and said I got something wrong. Multiple occasions.
So Kelly doesn't do that.
She doesn't do that.
What does Kelly do?
She goes to criminal court and files criminal charges.
Up in New Hampshire?
Yep. And she gets a temporary harassment order. So now the temporary harassment order is delivered to me on March 8th. The hearing is scheduled for April 1st. I didn't call a lawyer, and I didn't enlist any friends, because I knew this was bullshit, and I knew that I could beat it on my own. So I showed up April 1st with all of my printouts of Facebook, where I likened a Facebook war with her husband, who's been at war with me on Facebook now for like 6 years, since we did a podcast together where we were going popping and cracking and having fun, right? And I walk into the court, and they said to me, it's been dismissed. So what do you mean it's been dismissed? Well, she didn't show up. So we called her 5 minutes ago. She wasn't here. Great. So it's over, right? Yeah, it's over. Okay, great. So I go home, and I wrote the story that you're holding there. It's still on the Valley Patriot website. Go to valleypatriot.com. And the story that I wrote that day was how she tried to use a restraining order to stop me from writing the story. And when I posted that story on Facebook, I put at the top, coming tomorrow, the story she tried to stop.
And she responds by going to the cops.
And 3 hours later, there's another knock on my goddamn door by a North Andover police officer telling me she went down and got another harassment order alleging the same facts that were already dismissed now twice, because the first time she didn't show up, it was dismissed. And she showed up that afternoon and asked for a motion to reconsider. And the same judge, Judge Zano, denied the motion to reconsider. So she had 2 bites at the apple.
Yeah.
Then I write my story, post it on Facebook, and say, coming tomorrow, the story she tried to stop. And in under 3 hours, there's another knock on my door. I thought they were bringing me my gun back, because when they gave me the first order, they took my gun. So I said, oh, they had to bring me back my gun. This is great. Wow, you guys are fast. And he said, not exactly, Mr. Duggan. Not so fast. Mm-hmm. And he hands me another order. And when he hands me the order, I said, not for anything. I just left court like yesterday. This is like over. I said, not only that, but you guys keep filing these, you keep serving me these harassment orders that say I have to stay away from everywhere she works, where she lives, where her hobbies. But there's no listing of addresses. I don't know where she lives. I don't know what her hobbies are. I don't know where her nonprofit is located. I have no idea. I thought she had an office in City Hall. I was told by the mayor's office yesterday she has no office in City Hall. They told me you can come to City Hall anytime you want. She has no office in City Hall. I said, you guys need to send me that in writing, because she'll lie to the police and say she does, and I'll end up going to jail based on her word. Because when they arrested me based on her word.
That's right.
And there was no evidence. It was based on her word. So I immediately, the cop looked at me and said, listen, I'm only the guy that delivers the order. I don't know. This is out of New Hampshire. I'm told to come give this to you. I have to read it to you out loud. He reads it to me out loud. Can't post anything about her on social media. Can't go up near her house. Can't go anywhere near where she works. Anywhere where she's hobbies. Anywhere you think she might be. So in other words, like, if I know she's on a softball team, and I know she plays at the American Legion on Thursdays, don't go to the American Legion on Thursdays, basically, right? So I go to my computer and I looked up, because I know she's got this nonprofit IVCS, because that's what this is all about. And I looked up IVCS.
Yeah.
And the first address that came up was 599 Canal Street. That's where JT Torres used to have Liberty. Is it Liberty House? So JT Torres, a veteran friend of ours who's gotten an award from the Valley Patriot, had an office there called Liberty House. And when he closed it down, Kelly, I believe, took over his office at 599 Canal. So I kind of knew she was connected to 599 Canal. I also found on the Secretary of State's website and the Attorney General's website 47 Blanchard Street, which is in South Lawrence. There was no mention of a 90 Broadway Methuen. None. No mention of anything. I also didn't know what her home address was. So I'm Googling her. I'm trying to find her home address. Home addresses are harder to find than people think. And I could not find her home address. Eventually, I made a few phone calls to people that knew her, who pointed me in the direction of where I could find her home address. And I didn't get the number of her house, but I got the street. So I just knew if I stay away from that street, I'm okay. What do you have next on your list? Because I feel like we're coming up to... oh, okay, good. So here's the progression, just to give you just to recap. She files the harassment order March 8th, and on April 1st is the hearing. But in between the time that she files the first order and April 1st, oh, wait a minute. Can you bounce to, no, we'll stay here, So, in the original order, here's what she said. She said that I posted a photo of her and her husband on Facebook with threats. Can you pull that picture up? This is the actual picture that I had posted on Facebook that she was talking about. This is her husband at my annual charity bash. He's whispering in me. It's funny because it looks like he's kissing my neck, and that's what we've been joking about that the whole time, right? But he's whispering in my ear. I think he's thanking me for being there, right? So they've been to my charity bash. They've been to my charity bash at the same place on the same date every year, almost the same date every year. But did you see her picture in there? Because in the restraining order, the harassment order, I keep calling it a restraining order. In the harassment order, she claimed he posted a photo of me and my husband with threats. First of all, no threats. Second of all, no picture of her. But she had to say it was a picture of her, otherwise, you can't get a harassment order. He would have to come in and get a harassment order. This was all about him. I was mocking him. I was giving him a hard time. I never even mentioned her. When I did the analogy about Gaza and Israel, I was talking about a Facebook war between me and him. But like always, he's a tough talker but hides behind his wife whenever something happens. And by the way, that's exactly what happened. She went and she filed a harassment order against me, even though I didn't even mention her. I never even mentioned her. She claimed that there was a Facebook photo of her, and there's no Facebook photo of her. And you would think that the judge would take a look at that and go, maybe she's got no credibility. But she cried.
Well, can we go back to that really quick? Because this is a public official, right?
Right.
She draws a salary as the homeless coordinator for the city of Lawrence, right? And it's not like you did a story on attacking her personally. You're not accusing her of something.
Yeah, I didn't call her fat.
No, you didn't make fun of her appearance. You're not accusing her of having an affair or doing something tawdry. This is an official capacity, right?
Right.
Of using taxpayer money.
Right.
Where she's steering this money to her organization.
Right.
That her husband is president of.
Right.
And think about the big picture, by the way.
Who's a convicted felon for insurance fraud.
Yeah. Yeah, and no one is reporting this anywhere.
Nobody.
It's your job. It's the job of the media to actually uncover this and report it.
Where was all the Hispanic media? Where was all the Spanish language media?
Exactly. Yeah.
When Octavian Spanner stood in front of the council and blew the lid off this. By the way, he's the whistleblower. That guy's the hero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much as I want to say I'm the hero because I defended my First Amendment by going to jail, but I got to tell you, actually, it's Octavian Spanner, because he could have sat back and said, listen, if these guys want to play games and they want to break the law, screw them. Let them break. They're the ones that are going to suffer. He saved Brian DePina's ass from a federal charge by pulling Lynette's name and pulling Kelly's name off that list.
Well, look at the big picture. What does this mean going forward? Does this mean every reporter now has to think twice about reporting any kind of story like this? Like I said, you're not attacking her personally. You didn't you didn't make up any lies about her. And you didn't go after her about something that she did in her private life. This is very much her public life, and you're reporting it. And she's able to go to a judge and get this kind of harassment order on you, and you get to be hauled off to jail for what, 2 days?
Right.
For actually reporting the actual crime.
Right.
So think about what that means in the big picture, okay? Because now I consider myself a part of the media as well because I write for the Valley Patriot. I have a Substack newsletter. Am I going to be in trouble now if I uncover this kind of corruption?
Sure.
Fraud?
What happens the next time you go to the State House?
Yeah.
And you start asking for, I want to know what my state reps' expenses are. I want to know what their travel expenses are. And they say, he's harassing me.
If I put on Facebook, am I harassing my state rep if I report it?
Right.
I guess it is. Because this lady was able to go to a judge and get this order, and cops haul your ass off to jail.
Right, right.
So that's the scary
There's
part.
a picture in there that I think it's a picture with 3 pictures. You see that one? I forget what number I made it. It's a Facebook posting with 3 pictures on it. Okay, let's pull this up. So again, let's remember the dates. March 8th I get served the order. I have to stay 300 feet away from her because she's in fear of her life. She's in fear of her life from Tom Duggan because he made an analogy to tanks in Gaza. Okay? On March 20, I think it was 6th, I had my charity bash. Those of you who follow the show know we raised $58,000. Guess who showed up? I couldn't make that up if I tried. Guess who showed up at my fucking charity bash? She showed up. She didn't come in the room. She went to the bar because having been there before, as you just saw that picture of Debo, she knew that we have our after party in the bar. And if I had walked into the bar not knowing she was there, she would have had me put in jail for violating the order, for being within 300 feet of her. And not only did she show up at my charity bash on March 26th of this year, while the order was in effect, after she told the judge she was in fear of her life, she not only showed up, but what you're looking at right now is what she posted on Facebook. She checked in and bragged about it. She checked in and she fucking bragged about being at the Relief's Inn the night of my charity bash. Holy crap. Now, Lenny, you know a lot of women. I know a lot of women. I don't know any women who are in fear of their life from somebody and then actively go where the guy's DJing a wedding, where the guy's having a softball game.
They do
the guy's
opposite.
They run the other way if they're in fear of their life, right? Not only did she show up at my bash, she started showing up at TMF every Wednesday night. Because if she shows up, I have to leave. She did it last night, by the way. I wasn't going anyway. I was at the lake. But she went there to prevent me from going, or if I showed up, to get me violated and put in jail. So who's stalking who here?
Well, like you actually write in your story, there are women out there who need these orders to protect themselves from boyfriends and husbands who are actually threatening to kill them.
Right.
Think about that. And a judge has to obviously weigh this every single time. And it's just outrageous that a judge let this lady file a harassment order against you, when in fact they should be doing it against people that are actually harassing.
I have never threatened anybody in my life. Let me give a caveat to that, though. I've never threatened physical violence to anybody. I've threatened people all the time. Part of my job is to call an elected official and say, hey, I heard you're involved in some wrongdoing. I'll tell you what, knock this shit off and I won't write about it. But if you don't knock this shit off, you're on the front page of the next Valley Patriot. I'm giving you an opportunity. Right. And they'll say, are you threatening me? And I'm like, if that's your attitude, then yes, I'm threatening you. I'm threatening you that if you don't straighten out, you're going to be on the front page of the paper. So have I threatened people? Yes. Have I threatened them with physical harm? Let me tell you something. I am 57 years old, and I have never been arrested. I made it through 57 years on this planet without ever committing a violent act, without ever being accused of committing a violent act, without ever being accused of committing a crime, ever. Think about how vehemently my ex-girlfriends fucking hate my guts. Think about the shit that they have accused me of on Facebook on a regular basis. Never once have they said, he hit me. Never once have they said, he's violent. Never once have they said, he got funny with my children. Never. Never. I'm the least violent person you will ever meet. And yet the Lawrence homeless coordinator is all over Facebook and in a courtroom crying, saying that she was in fear of her life because I accused her of stealing $3 million. And the homeless in Lawrence are so violent that she's worried they're going to retaliate. As if all the homeless are following me on Facebook, I guess. I don't know.
No, what it sounds like is she's just afraid of being exposed.
Right.
And she's never had this before.
And she didn't want to say $200,000 because then people start looking at $200,000. People find out what this is really about. So she pivots to the $3 million. I can tell you where the $3 million came from that she's so obsessed with, she keeps talking about. Because I actually went back and I went on Facebook and I searched for my name and the phrase $3 million. So in December, Stephanie Infante at the Lawrence City Council questioned Kelly Frazier, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing, we have a letter here from the state that says the city received a $3 million grant for the homeless. You're the homeless coordinator. We can't find that money. Did we get the money? Did we get it and spend it? Right. Has the state turned it over yet? And she couldn't answer the question. They then called up Awilda Pimentel, her boss, and asked the same question, and Awilda couldn't answer the question. So I went on Facebook and made some very snarky comments. I agree, I was being an asshole. And I said something to the effect of, wow, $3 million goes a long way toward helping the homeless of Lawrence. A couple days later, it was really cold, and I posted something like, you know, it's 2 degrees below zero. $3 million would go a long way to providing heat for the homeless. And I was trying to get somebody in City Hall off their ass to look into this, to find out where this $3 million was, because I wanted to go to the homeless. So she goes on Facebook and starts posting that I'm accusing her of stealing the money, because she's always a victim of everything. Like, she can't ever just come out and say, no, you know what, here's what happened. I don't know, I'm the homeless coordinator, I don't handle that, or whatever. The state didn't give us the money yet. They gave us the money and it was spent on XYZ. There was never an explanation. It was, I'm a victim, he's picking on me. And so she starts accusing me of accusing her of stealing the money. So in response, I wrote something to the effect of, I found it last night, I said something to the effect of, wow, $3 million $3 million buys a lot of hair products, because she owns a hair salon. Hey, $3 million buys a lot of hair products. It was tongue-in-cheek, right? She has not shut the fuck up about $3 million since December. It's everywhere she goes. She got evicted from her hair salon, and she's in court on the rent, and she's telling the judge that she can't pay her rent because she's so mentally distraught that I accused her of stealing $3 million.
Yeah.
Like, it's all she can think about. It's all she can talk about. When what I am accusing her of, she doesn't want to talk about, because that's true. I am accusing her of applying for $200,000 of an ARPA grant, Federal American Rescue Plan money, and steering that money not to a nonprofit that applied for the grant besides herself, but to her own nonprofit. That's what the allegation was that I was ready to come out with, and that's the allegation that her story stopped.
No, it's shocking and disappointing that it even got that far.
It never should have got that far.
Because like you said earlier, this Octavian Spanner, he didn't have to come forward. He didn't have to expose this, but he did. And like he says, there is an inherent conflict of interest for Frazier to receive the funds while she's working in the department that disperses the funds.
And her husband...
I mean, how does it even get this far?
How about the nepotism of her being CEO of the nonprofit and her husband is the president? Like, where's the nepotism policy for that nonprofit, right? So there's all these things that are going on which she doesn't want anyone to know about. So she can't come out and say, Duggan's about to expose me for trying to steer $200,000 to my own nonprofit as a public employee whose office administers the grant. She can't say that. So she's got to make it about something else. She's got to make it about she's the victim of the battered women syndrome. Mm-hmm. She's being bullied by the evil Tom Duggan, who walks with a cane and can barely make it up a fucking flight of stairs.
When she got exposed, she should have backed right out.
Well,
that very minute.
Here's the thing:
she should have known that this never should have got that far. But you know what? We have such a culture of corruption in this state, and let's face it, in that city, it probably happens all the time. And as someone who works in that, City Hall, she probably sees it all the time.
Right.
And she wanted her scoop, right? Her piece of the pie. And that's why all these millions get spent on things like homelessness in this state, just never seems to make it to the homeless.
Right.
I mean, that's why they're relying on people like you to, get free food donated and volunteers to help, deliver it to them. Meanwhile, there's millions of dollars getting spent, and it never makes it to the people that need it.
If a fraction of those $1 billion went to the homeless,
oh my word,
TMF would be out of business. There'd be no need for TMF.
That's exactly right.
We would set up at the bus stop every Wednesday night, and there'd be no homeless to feed.
Yeah.
Because if the money was going in a predominantly Democrat state like Massachusetts, they allocate billions and billions of dollars
every year
for the homeless.
Yep.
That never fucking make to the, excuse my French, but it never makes it to the homeless. And it's heartbreaking to see a veteran in a tent on the banks of the Merrimack River with a DD-214, a discharge papers in his pocket, to prove that he's a veteran. And we were just talking about this before we went on the air. My friend, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name, but my friend is here who has helped us pull veterans off the banks of the Merrimack River. And they never should have been there in the first place.
Exactly. And people run for state rep and state senator who see this and they say, you know what, this is wrong. And I'm going to run for state rep. I'm going to run for mayor. I'm going to run for city council and put a stop to it.
Right.
And then they get there, and I don't know what the hell happens. But when they get to Beacon Hill, I know it happens. I don't know about City Hall, but when they get to Beacon Hill, I think their eyes light up, and they want to be part of that insiders club, where if you do what the speaker says, you know what? You're going to get a chairmanship, you're going to get some phony baloney position that comes with a giant raise, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 raise.
We've done whole shows on that.
On top of your $80,000 base salary and all the benefits that go with it. And all you got to do is keep your mouth shut.
Right.
Don't talk about this. Just do what the speaker says, and don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the billions. And that's what happens. Because when people first run, they have the highest of emotions, and they want to do the right thing, right? The best of intentions. And then it just all comes crashing down as soon as they get there for a lot of the people. And it's just heartbreaking. And then you read something like this, where this lady, Kelly, she knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. She knew all along, and she wanted her piece of the pie.
Right.
And so she created this organization, puts her husband in charge of it, and tries to funnel $200,000 to it. Where, like you said, if you got that kind of money for just 1 year,
right,
that encampment would be gone.
There'd be no homeless.
For $200,000.
If you gave me $200,000 to administer,
the problem in 1 year.
There would be no homeless in Lawrence.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely, there wouldn't be.
And there's the real tragedy in the whole story.
Right.
I mean, on top of the whole, threatening the press and the media, which we are now threatened over this.
Right.
This is the real crime, and this is the real crisis here, and it's heartbreaking.
So she admits. So she files March 8th. She shows up at my bash March 26th. Obviously, she's not afraid. April 1st comes. She doesn't show up. It gets dismissed. She shows up later that day and files a motion to reconsider and says, I was here, but I didn't have my evidence with me. I had to go home and get it. By the time I got back, it was dismissed. The judge denies the motion to reconsider. So now she's had 2 bites at the apple. So I go home and I write this story. She sees the story and then goes down to the court and files for another order, admitting that it's because I wrote the story. Yeah, and the judge allowed it? The judge allowed it.
That's what I'm getting at. How does the judge do that?
The judge allowed it. Judge Zano in Salem District Court allowed that to go forward.
Think of all the wives and girlfriends that have a hard time doing something
Right.
About their husbands and boyfriends who are actually threatening and battering.
Right.
You know, and they have the hardest time in the world keeping these men out of their lives.
Right.
And this lady is allowed to do that over a mere Facebook posting. Think about that.
So she files that third order, and the judge allows it. So that was on April 2nd, right?
Yep.
The hearing was supposed to be April 1st. I write the story April 1st when it gets dismissed. She's so mad that I wrote a news story, she filed again and alleged all the same facts in the first two orders that were dismissed. Now, nothing new happened other than me writing a news story, and so she admits that she did it because I wrote a news story that made her feel threatened.
Yeah.
Well, she felt threatened because she's worried that all the money's going to start drying up now.
Yeah, what was the actual threat? There was never any
There was
kind of threat
never
to
a
her
threat, no.
personally. The only threat was this loss of funds.
Right.
And that she was going to be exposed.
Right. So we asked for a hearing on now the third order. And by the way, you guys who have been tuning into my show all along know that I did a whole show, not even here. I did a whole show with an empty desk that said government censorship because I was hoping that the judge or somebody in the judge's office would understand that this is not a typical case of a guy beating his girlfriend. Like I have no relationship with this clown, with this woman. I shouldn't have said clown. I apologize. But I have no relationship with her. She told the court we were related. We're not related. Like, we might be related like 8th cousins, 32nd removed if you go back to Ireland. Maybe. But there's no relation. There's no blood relation between us. But she claimed that there was, and she claimed that there was to get the order, right? So we asked for a hearing, and the hearing was to be scheduled April 22nd. So now from April 2nd, I get served again. I don't get my gun back, and now I can't. Now I've posted a story, but I can't now post the story about the money because I've now got another order, right? So I have another order, and I can't post about the $200,000. And we have a hearing scheduled for April 22nd. On April 20th, I got invited to an engagement party. The Saturday before the Monday hearing. Now, we knew we were going to win the Monday hearing. We knew for sure we were going to win it. Because, A, she alleged all the same facts in what was dismissed, so just on that alone it should have been dismissed. And 2, I never threatened her. So we knew it was going to go away. But I got invited to this engagement party at a church in Methuen, St. Andrew's Church at 90 Broadway. I had never been to this church. I've never been in this church. But my friend Nora Higginbottom, who, by the way, Debo, is 32 years old, not underage, as you claimed on Facebook yesterday, who's 32 years old. She's getting married to a very nice guy named Steve. She invited me. She sent me a text message and asked me to come to her engagement party. And I said, before I even entertain the idea, this is all in a text message.
Yeah.
Before I even entertain the idea, I need to know if anybody in your crowd is going to invite Debo and Kelly. Because the last thing in the world I need is to get arrested the weekend before my hearing. They said, no way. We have nothing to do with them. They're not invited. They're not going to be there. Great. I said, where is it and when? She said, St. Andrew's Church. I said, I don't know where that is. Where is that? She said, 90 Broadway. Now, if I knew that Kelly Frazier had an office in that church, which I still to this moment don't believe, but let's just pretend that she does. I would have said, listen, she's got 90 Broadway. I can't go there. Okay, how can I go there? And by the way, if I'd known, why would I say, well, I don't know where St. Andrew's Church is. What's the address? So I go at 5:15 in the afternoon on April 20th. It's a nice day. I pull up my Facebook in my car when I pulled into the lot, and I see Rich Russell has posted a picture of Debo and Kelly at the Elks. I'm like, all right, well, they're at the Elks. That's in Andover. That's like the other side of the valley. I'm good. I don't have to worry about running into them today. And I get out of my car with my cane, and I was not feeling very well that day, so it took me a good 5 minutes to get from the parking lot to the door, and I went inside. And as soon as I got inside, thank God, table 1 was right by the door because I couldn't do much more walking, and that's where Nora's father, Sam, was sitting. So he helped me to the table, and I literally sat there for the entire hour and a half that I was there. And when the food line was ready, somebody else went and got some food for me because I didn't want to get up. I wasn't feeling good. So I was sitting there eating. I'd been there about an hour and a half, and Sam said something to the effect of, I know you're having problems with Debo and Kelly, And I'm not really much of a fan of them either. Something to that effect. He said, but I understand that they haven't paid, they're not up on their rent. So I think they're going to get thrown out. And I said, thrown out of where? He said, well, they've got an office next door.
Oh, jeez.
So I thought, well, they've got an office next door. Yeah. That's the next property. I should be all right. They're next door. He said, and I'll tell you something else. I keep telling her, excuse my French, I keep telling her not to park those fucking vans back there because I'm the guy that plows the parking lot, and she keeps parking her vans. And I said, wait a minute. That van that I saw when I pulled in, the white van, that's her van? He said, yeah, I go, I can't be here. What if she comes looking for that van while I'm walking in my car? And she makes something up and says, oh, he pointed at me with his finger like a gun. I'm in fear for my life. I don't need the aggravation. I got to go. He said, I'll tell you what. Stay there for a minute. Let me go get my daughter and my wife. And I'll have them walk you to your car. So if you end up running into her, you'll have backup. You'll have people who have witnesses as to what did or didn't happen. So Nora and her mom walked me to my car. And in the meantime, by the way, I did a selfie with Sam while I was there. They walked me to my car. It's, I think, 7:15 in the afternoon at night. It's still light out. I go home. I'm home. I start at the office. I start working on the paper. At 12 midnight, I fall asleep. And at 12:30, something wakes me up. And I didn't know what it was, so I got up and I went to the bathroom, and I'm kind of peeling around in the back of the apartment. And as I came back to the front where the bedroom is, I heard something loud again, but it was outside. So I opened the window, and there's 3 police officers down there. Come to find out, if you watch the body cam footage, this is just so great. She and Debo went to the Methuen police, told the Methuen police that they owned the building. Didn't say it was a church. So they owned the building. And that I had posted on Facebook that I was at St. Andrew's Church. I said I was at 90 Broadway. And that they owned 90 Broadway. They have an office in that building, and they own it. And this is proof that I violated the harassment order. Now, if this had been in Salem, New Hampshire, Salem's harassment order is a civil infraction. You get a summons, they call you into court, they find out what happened, then they decide. In Massachusetts, they don't have harassment orders, so they treat it like a 209A restraining order, and they arrest you. But all I know is that there's cops at my door. I go down and I talk to them. Officer Phelan says, Methuen police officers now in North Andover. Mr. Duggan, where'd you go tonight? I said, I was at an engagement party. Why? Where was that? As a St. Anthony's, St. Andrew's, I don't know, it was one of those churches on Broadway. 90 Broadway? Yeah, I think that was it. Oh. You know that she owns that building? I said, it's a church. How could she own that building? Well, she says she owns the building, so you're under arrest. Wait a minute. She told you she owns the building, and on her word, you're arresting me? It's a church. Did she show you proof? Did she show you any evidence that she owns that building? I'm sorry, Mr. Duggan. We're going to argue with you. Please now, listen, I was raised by cops. I'm the last guy in the world that's ever going to give a cop a hard time. I understand she's doing her job. She was very polite with me. She was very professional. I have nothing to complain about other than the fact that she didn't read me my rights while she was questioning me, which, did help in court. But she was doing her job, and Officer Young, who was her partner, was also doing his job. She said, it's a mandatory arrest, there's nothing we can do. But don't worry, Tom, you'll be home in an hour. We'll bail you, you'll be home in an hour. It's not the big deal you think it is. I said, listen, I'm 57 years old. I've never been arrested in my life. To me, it's a big fucking deal. You're going to tell me I'm going to have a criminal record now because I went to an engagement party? I didn't see her. I didn't run into her. I didn't drive by her in traffic. I didn't throw the finger in traffic. None of that happened. You're telling me she owns that church. Well, that's what she told us, so you're under arrest.
Does she, in fact, own the church?
She doesn't. It came out at trial that it's owned by the Archdiocese of Boston, which I suspect was one of the...
So she lied.
So she outright lied, according to Officer Phelan and Officer Young. Mm-hmm. So they arrest me. They bring me to the station. They book me. And as they're closing the cell door, they said, by the way, we talked to the bail bondsman. There's no bail on a violation of a 209A. I said, it's not a 209A. It's a harassment order out of New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. Well, in Massachusetts, we treat them the same. Mm. So now it's a Saturday night, and I spend all night Saturday night, all day Sunday, all night Sunday night, all Monday morning, and then they transfer me to Lawrence District Court in shackles, hand and ankle bracelets. They bring me in and they put me in with a bunch of like real skeevy felons in the court. There's a jail. I don't know if most people know there's a jail in the basement of the court. And they finally brought me up. Thank God I had a lawyer that came. He talked to the prosecutor. He talked to the judge. And they let me out on bail. But now it's Monday morning, the 22nd, remember?
Yep.
That's the day I'm supposed to have my dismissal hearing. We make it to New Hampshire. I get bailed out. We make it to New Hampshire. And because I got arrested for violating the order, they continued the order. So I lose my dismissal on the order because they had me arrested. This was their plan all along, to have me violate the order so the order would stay in effect, because if they went on the merit of the order of, oh, there's tanks on the border of Gaza, they knew it never would have flied.
Well, what gets me is that these police officers should have known better, too. I understand it's the weekend, so the registry of deeds is not open, but you know what's open? The internet's open.
That's correct.
You do a Google search of any address, and it'll give you a complete description of the property.
Right.
And then you can go into the tax records.
Right.
And see who owns what property. It's public record. It's not a secret.
Right.
So that's all they had to do. It would have taken less than 5 minutes. It would have been faster to track down the ownership of that church than to go to your house.
Right.
Honest to God, it
Right.
would have been. And this lady makes up a story like that she owns a church?
She owned a church.
Yeah.
And it was
There you
testified. So now the hearing, the trial, so I had a jury trial started Monday this week. We had a 7-member jury. One became an alternate at the end, so we had a 6-member jury. Officer Young and Officer Phelan were the 2 witnesses for the prosecution against me, the first 2. And my lawyer asked them, did Miss Frazier tell you she owned that building? Yes. Did you arrest Mr. Duggan based on the fact that she owned that building? Mm-hmm. Yes. Have you subsequently come to learn who owns that building? See, Officer Young said no. I believe Officer Phelan said yes, the Archdiocese of Boston.
Yep.
So then Mr. Duggan never should have been arrested then, should? Well, I'm just the arresting officer. I'm just telling you what I did. I'm telling you what... Again, does she have culpability? Yes, she should have done her job better. But again, she's a cop, right? And cops are there to arrest people. And so I don't hold anything against either one of these 2 officers.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not going to bail out the cops like that. You know why? Because here's the thing. Lots of people want to screw over a person, right?
Right.
And, this means any woman can have any man brought to jail by saying, I own the building that he went to over the weekend. Think about that. If you went to, not just a church, if you went to a restaurant, if you went to a bar, a club, any kind of public event.
They could just make it up and say, I own that
hey,
restaurant.
I own that building, and my former boyfriend or ex-husband is there. You need to arrest him because there's a restraining order on him. Think about that.
Right.
That means any woman can do that to any man
Right.
at any time. And the police are just going to show up and arrest this guy?
Right.
No, I'm sorry.
And
I
by the way,
can't let him off the hook.
And by the way, while all of this is,
by the
way, while all of this is going on from beginning to end, from March 8th to even this morning, they're attacking me on Facebook every single day with all of their little followers, all their little minions, and they're making outrageous accusations. They posted pictures of my parents. They made accusations about my family. They're making accusations, all kinds of crazy stuff, and I can't answer it because I can't post on their Facebook page because that would be considered a violation of the harassment order. So they post like these accusations, and then an hour later go, see, you know it must be true because he'd be denying it. Knowing that I can't deny it, knowing that I'm gagged. I was literally gagged by a criminal court to stop me from talking about these people who are now stalking me.
Right.
They showed up at TMF last night. They showed up at TMF last week. They showed up at TMF the week before that. They showed up at my charity bash. When I check in at a restaurant and I post a picture of my food, they show up at the restaurant. I got smart, though. After the first time, I started checking in as I leave. So I take a picture of my food, then when in my car pulling out of the parking lot, then I post that I'm checking in with my food, and then I get a phone call from the owner or the bartender or a friend of mine that said Salvatore's and Sevmar and a few other places where this has happened. And they call and go, hey, guess who just walked in? They just walked in. They went in the men's bathroom. They're looking for you. They're in the bar. They're in the restaurant, right? So I don't understand how, I guess I do, right? Because the system is so corrupt. But I have a trial where 2 Methuen police officers admit that she lied. Then she gets up and she actually said, Mr. Duggan knew that I had an office at 90 Broadway. Mind you, she still hasn't proven that she has an office at 90 Broadway. Because I called him one day and asked him for advertising. In what fucking universe are these people spending money with me?
Right.
They spent the last 10 years attacking me on Facebook, attacking my family on Facebook, attacking my newspaper, attacking this show, attacking my friends. They figured they couldn't get to me, so they started attacking my friends. In what universe is she calling? And the jury saw right through it. Like, they saw right through the lies. They saw right through everything. She stood up there and she told all kinds of tales. She was fake holding back tears. And I thought when she was done, I was probably cooked. Because, when a woman starts doing with the tears, you get a couple of guys on the jury, they start to feel bad. We all know, we've all been in relationships. No matter how right you are with your significant other, the minute she starts crying, you melt like a candle,
But
right?
still, according to what you said, she perjured herself.
She absolutely did. And not only did she perjure herself on that, she perjured herself on the original order.
Right.
She claimed that I posted a photo of her and her husband. She's not in the photo. She also posted, hey, do you have that other video, right? Do you have that other video ready? 9 minutes left. So she also claimed in writing, in her own handwriting, in the harassment order, that on this show, I threatened her life and gave out her home address. I'm going to show you a 1-minute clip now of what I actually said. And so I want to say thank you to Mike Gagliardi, who for 20 straight years,
you both set that
even
up to the
though,
51
and despite
second
the
rule?
fact that we have exact opposite political views when people throw rocks at me, and I look at them knowing how much they depend on people that are financial backers of my paper, and I look at them and I go, you really want to attack the Valley Patriot right now when you desperately need so-and-so and he's sitting on my board? But see, most people don't know who sits on my board. And I did that on purpose because I don't want people treating me special because they're afraid of who's on my board. I want them to come after me anyway so I can crush them with who's on my board. That's what I want. I want to make, like when what's his name? Debro Brown, yo, popping and cracking and popping. When that guy on Facebook starts coming after me and starts attacking the Valley Patriot, I have one board member that calls me every single time it happens and goes, why don't you just tell him that I'm sitting on your board and just really freak him out? And I'm like, I'm waiting for the big bomb to drop on my head. I'm waiting for him to really come after me. Because then when he really comes after me, then I'm just going to say, release the Kraken. That's what I'm going to do. And we'll see what happens then. And I won't even have to fight my own battle because there's at least 2 people on my board ready to go every single time it happens. So happy anniversary to everyone. I want to thank all of our advertisers, our readers. So did you hear me give out their home address? You know what she put in writing? And then, by the way, go to the Valley Patriot website. Go to valleypatriot.com. It's on the right-hand side. Clip the story, and I posted the actual harassment order in her own handwriting that she wrote. Do you know what she wrote? Do you know what she said that clip represented? That I said I was going to drop a bomb on her head, and that I threatened her and her husband and gave out her home address, which, by the way, I didn't even know until like a month ago, and told my followers and my supporters to go to her house and harass her. In her own handwriting, that's what she said. You just saw what I actually said. And somehow, Judge Zano, I don't know if he hates Israel, I don't know what his issue is, but somehow he looked at all of this and said, well, he violated the order, so we're going to continue the order. So here's what I've done. Now that the jury has come back 15 minutes after they got the charges, 15 minutes they came back and said not guilty. 15 minutes.
That's got to be a record. 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Wow.
So I then went home and I borrowed a little bit of money. Thank you to my brother Danny. And I put $5,000 retainer down and I hired Gregory Sullivan from Sullivan and Malloy out of Concord, New Hampshire. He teaches First Amendment law at Suffolk University, and he is before the New Hampshire Supreme Court 8 to 10 times a year. I actually have gone online and read several of his cases. They're freaking brilliant. And I called him, and I hired him, and I sent him the documents, and he called me back, and I said, please don't waste my time or my money if you don't think I have a case. He said, Tom, I'm way busier than you. I would not be wasting my time if I didn't think you had a case. The fact that she filed the order, it was dismissed, she asked for reconsideration, she was denied, and then the following day she admits that because you wrote a news story about her, she filed with the same exact allegations that were already dismissed. He said, this is a home run. Nothing's a guarantee in the law, but I'm really, really confident about your case. So within the next 30 days, I'm confident that this harassment order is going to get lifted. I am convinced of that. Because the First Amendment is the First Amendment is the First Amendment is the First Amendment. And when you lie, and you provably lie, like you saw the video of what I showed you, go to the Valley Patriot website and read what she wrote that I said. You saw the picture where she claimed I posted a photo of her and her husband. She's not in the picture. When you provably lie, when you get up in court and say, we're related, which, by the way, for a harassment order, that's one of the things. If you're related, that's one of the prongs that you need to do in order to get the harassment order. She claimed we were related, and we're not related. And if we are, it's like 37th cousin twice removed back to Ireland.
No,
like,
that's
there's
another,
no actual relation.
That sounds like
going
another
on.
instance of perjury. Because
Right.
when you fill that out, you must at the end of it sign some sort of statement that says, this is true to the best of my knowledge, right? She had nothing in the best of her knowledge to think you were related.
Right.
No way, no how, unless you guys appeared at a wedding together and didn't know you were related to the bride and groom. Unless that happened.
I will
she
say
knew she wasn't related to you.
Listen, I will say in her defense, because I really hate to defend her on anything as this is going, right? But in her defense, there has been talk in the family that like her family and my family might be related going back to Ireland, which is why I keep saying that. Because I do remember like when her father Skip was the nicest guy in the world. And when her father Skip was alive, I remember being at a barbecue at my cousin Irene's house, and I remember Irene saying that like we were related kind of like back to Ireland somewhere, like they had traced the roots, but there's no actual like blood relation between, like it's way more than fourth or fifth or sixth cousins. Like it's not even close.
Yeah, but that's not the reason why they have that clause in these orders, right? It's for someone that they know to be a relative. That's why that order is that much more serious if you are a blood relative. Right. But she has no reason to believe.
Well, really, most of these restraining or harassment orders are issued to someone that you're in a romantic relationship.
Exactly.
Someone who's a member of your household, like a roommate.
Yep.
Somebody who, like maybe your brother Danny, my brother Danny, if I go to my brother Danny's for a barbecue and we end up getting drunk and we have a fist fight, that's another reason for a harassment order. But very, very, very rarely is it a public employee gets a harassment order against a reporter because they made an analogy to a Facebook war and the war in Gaza.
Well, if I can go off in a slightly different direction.
Please do. We got 4 minutes.
Have you gotten your gun back?
No, I have not.
Okay, so in Massachusetts...
although all of my friends have their guns, so anywhere I go with them.
No, but the point is we have what's called red flag laws in this state. Right. Passed recently, now just expanded, I think, just recently with the bill passed this month. Right. Where a family member can have guns taken away from a family member if they think they're a threat. Right. Correct? Yep. So she'd be able to...
all she has to do is pretend she's a family member.
There you go. Well, that's what I'm getting at, right? And, a lot of us were nervous about red flag bills, and I signed on to it because I thought it was ironclad, but now they just keep expanding who's allowed to file a red flag bill. And this is just another incidence and another example of why it's a dangerous idea.
Absolutely.
Because she can just claim to be a relative.
Right. Well, she claimed she owned the church. So she claimed she was going to buy ads in the paper.
So anyone can take away anyone's gun because you can somehow prove you were related 7 generations ago back in Ireland or something
My
like
lawyer
that.
got up in front of the jury and he said, members of the jury, and he held up the printout of what I posted on Facebook when I checked in with Sam Higginbottom and said, if Mr. Duggan thought he was in a building that was going to get him arrested, why would he post it on Facebook and check in?
Yeah.
Like, why would he go, hey, here
crazy?
I am, I'm somewhere I'm not supposed to be, come arrest me. And I saw all the jury members nodding in the right place. And the other thing is she said that when I pulled in to the parking lot, I should have seen her van with the IVCS stickers on it. And then my lawyer pulled out a picture of the van with no stickers on it. And said, can you show me where the stickers are on this van? She couldn't do it because there were no stickers there. So I think every time that they caught her lying, they caught her lying about the building, they caught her lying about the stickers, they caught her lying about the other stuff. I think at that point there were so many lies that the jury really, even if they thought maybe I was guilty, I think at that point they had to go, yeah, but you know what? Where's the evidence? And when I testified, I think the most important thing I had said was when the prosecutor got up and said, Mr. Duggan, like, she was so incredulous. She did a great job. Like, I really liked her. She was very personable and she was very professional. But she said, Mr. Duggan, are you actually going to sit here and tell us that you had no idea that she had an office in that building? And I said, I still don't believe to this minute that she does have an office in that building. Have you produced a lease agreement that she has an office in that building? How about a picture of the door where she says there's a sign?
And?
Is there a picture of the door? Is there a lease agreement? Is there a rental agreement?
Did Ms. Prosecutor have that?
She had nothing.
There you go.
She had nothing.
Yeah.
So Kelly testified that there's a sign on the door. My lawyer pulls out pictures and says, show me where the sign is. We have pictures of the front, both sides, and the back. Show me where the sign is.
Unbelievable.
And they couldn't. So I ended up spending 2 days in jail. My First Amendment rights were taken away. My Second Amendment rights have been taken away. My Fourth Amendment rights have been taken away. By the way, Fifth Amendment rights were taken away because they never read me my rights when they arrested me and used all my statements against me. On top of the fact that I'm a Methuen police officer, audio taped my conversation with my lawyer while I was in my cell and turned that conversation over to the district attorney. So my 14th Amendment rights were violated. All because all I wanted to do as a journalist is do my job. And I want to leave you with this. It's really interesting, for lack of a better word, that they tried this hard to stop the story. Because the first story I wrote was about Lynette Perez, as we said at the beginning of the show. And she still has her job. Mm-hmm. She's not in jail for what she did. As far as I know, nobody in law enforcement is investigating her. So if they had just let me write the story, it would have been a one-day story, like everything else, like Lynette Perez, like everything else, like the police cars that went to the Dominican Republic when Willie was mayor, like all the other things that I've written about over the 20 years we've been doing the Valley Patriot, and then it would have been yesterday's news, and nobody would have remembered. Yeah, it might have come up if you Google her, but she's in the news so much that would have been on page 13 by next week.
Yeah.
But instead, they had to declare war. And then accuse me of being violent because I used an analogy to a war. And so we are going to be appealing. I'm 99.9% sure the order will be lifted. And don't worry, her personal safety is not at risk. It's not like that. But I'll tell you what, once the order is done, I've got 5 more stories coming. Because I can't in one show, even though it's a double show today, I can't in one show blow out everything because it'll just blow your mind and you won't be able to retain it all. Like this has been going on for so long now. I've had all of my rights because I believe in the First Amendment and I was sticking up for my right to speak as a journalist. I had to go through all of this. So I don't want to hear any of you fucking keyboard warriors on Facebook tell me how you care about the First Amendment and you're willing to fight for your rights. Because unless you're willing to go to jail for your rights, I don't want to hear it. Unless you're willing to endure people harassing you and attacking you and making wild accusations against you on Facebook every day that you can't answer because they've got an order against you, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I have walked the walk on this, and I've been quiet for a long time. And as far as I'm concerned, it's over the minute that harassment order is finally lifted by the state Supreme Court. And it's going to be lifted. I'm convinced that it will be. And then it will be over unless she tries something else. And if next week she tries to steer federal money to her nonprofit, or she plays some other shenanigan, then we'll write about that too. And if she's grown up enough to just let me do my job, it will become yesterday's news again, like everything else. Unfortunately, some people's egos are so fragile, you can't. They walk around with a chip on their shoulder, daring you to knock it up, but the minute you do, they're a victim.
Yep.
So I appreciate you doing the double show with us today, Chrissy. Lenny, I appreciate you coming. We have a studio audience, which is great today. We got like 30 people here who have been chomping at the bit to hear this story. And I've been chomping at the bit to tell it.
Oh, yeah.
But unfortunately, I had judges telling me that I couldn't. And by the way, I have signed a deal with a publishing house. This is going to be a book. I am going to use names, and I am going to use my First Amendment. Now that I have affirmed my right, my First Amendment right, the people who didn't want to be talked about, boy, are they going to be talked about. I want to thank all of our sponsors. I should have done this at the beginning of the show.
No,
we have a shit ton of new sponsors. McClellan Real Estate, Century 21, the Zanny Pesci Law Office, Marston & Son Construction, EIS, Investigation and Gun Training, Attorney Paul Lambert, my very good friend from Lambert and Randone, Tomo and Shaken Seafood. Karina and I had lunch at Tomo's before the show. Clear Path for Veterans New England, AFC Urgent Care, Patrick's Eatery, the old Harrison's Roast Beef on 125 in North Andover, Prime Insurance, the Mercurio Law Office, 11 Restaurant, which is going to be opening next week at 226 Essex Street. Chris's Barbershop on Main Street in Salem, New Hampshire. Today, first time, Enterprise Bank joins the Valley Patriot family. Thank you to Jessica and Jen and everybody, Marilyn and everybody, Jesus, everybody at Enterprise Bank for coming on I think it's a 2-year deal with us. W3 on Don Signtech in North Andover, Stadium Chiropractic, J&W Shoes in North Andover, a free shout out to Harold's Pies, 4-Star Lighting, Salvatore's Restaurant, and another free shout out to JG's Ice Cream. Sounds like Melvin Taylor says you got to go home. Thank you to Lenny Mirra. Thank you, Chrissy, the studio audience. So go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.